if you knew what was in that book, you'd turn to jelly. It's not meant for worms like you.
That's right. This is episode 134, recorded September 23rd, 2020.
We didn't cut it that much.
No.
Gruesome Magazine.
Hello, I am your host, Doc Rodine, and this podcast is about horror films released between 1970 and 1979. Each episode, my co-host Jeff Mohr and I will tackle another classic or not so classic film from this wondrous, groovy, gory, and influential decade. We have four of us here, even though you can't see them right now. Here they are. We're talking about, what are we talking about? Equinox from 1970. Or is it? We're going to discuss all that. This is going to be fun. This is an interesting movie, to say the least. But let me introduce the crew. With me this week, of course, is the one and only Jeff Mohr. How you doing, Jeff?
I'm doing good. I'm thinking we should all plan a picnic up into the mountains, up by that old castle. You know where that house caved in. Yeah,
that sounds like fun.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Also joining us tonight is writer, director, special effects guru, and all-around nice guy, Bill Mulligan, also known as Lou Cipher. I don't know where that comes from, but what am I missing?
Well, if you didn't know, if someone introduces himself as, "Hi, I'm Mr. Asmodeus," even if he mispronounces it, you run. I mean, yes. He wasn't even, whatever. This is public education.
Quick, disconnect Lou.
Disconnect Lou. All right. Also joining us tonight is Chad Hunt. He's comic book artist and co-host Decades of Horror, the classic era, along with the 80s now. You're doing a lot of podcasts. That's awesome. How you doing, Chad?
I'm freaking awesome.
You are freaking awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that in the book.
That's what she said.
All right. What? All right, let's do this.
I've heard it all, Doc. I'm old.
Yeah, this is going south so fast. But
Bill's a handsome guy, but he's no Robert De Niro.
I don't know. Maybe he is. All right, this is Equinox, filmed over several years, but released in 1970. Directors are Dennis Muren and Jack Woods. Cast includes Edward Connell, Barbara Hewitt, I would say, Frank Bonner, Robin Christopher, Jack Woods himself. The tagline is a cult barrier between good and evil. Four teenagers go out in the woods for a hike and encounter a creepy forest ranger that they do, and a mysterious book with the power to summon demonic creatures without the A. We'll put the A in later. From beyond.
Creatures. Creatures. Scarier even than creatures are creatures.
Creatures are scary.
Mess you up.
Right.
Did you say demonic?
Maybe.
Did I? No.
Oh, that's so demonic. I can't stand it.
Oh, no, I didn't do that. I'm going to just shuffle you guys around. All right. This film.
It won't help. I'm still here.
This was released in October of 1970. Just the entire month, just October. We don't know what day, but in October. There's other taglines like "It was a peaceful mountain retreat until it came home." I like that. There's a lot of interesting things to talk about this film, but I just want to bring Bill in first because Bill's got to give us the history of this film because there are actually two versions and a long history of this thing. So. Oh my gosh, Bill, if you will, educate us, sir.
So first off, this is one of the greatest movies ever made. This is one of the most influential movies in my life. Okay. Equinox started out as a bunch of talented young people with no credit, no names, no fame or anything who wanted to make a monster movie. It was at the tail end. When they were filming this, Night of the Living Dead hadn't come out and changed everything. So, this scene has kind of an old-fashioned look to it because it came at a very weird time. It was like the end of the old era and right before the beginning of the new. And so it's a pretty standard story. A bunch of kids go into the woods and terrible things happen to them. Monsters come out. Right. And they made this movie. They clearly didn't know what they were doing movie-wise, but they were brilliant special effects-wise. This thing has special effects that were genuinely revolutionary, but it only came out at 70 minutes. And they shopped it around, and nobody was interested until Jack C. Harris, who is a guy who has his name on a lot of films that we do love, saw it, thought it had potential, knew it had to be longer, and gave it to another director who shot an additional 20 minutes, took some stuff out, put some stuff in. We'll talk about this guy later because, man, I got to admire what he did. And they released it as Equinox. And I remember the ads. I was 10 years old, and I remember the ads on TV, and they scared the crap out of me. The movie came out. He made the money. They made their money back, which would be hard not to do because apparently it only cost $7,000 or so to film the initial Equinox movie. And I don't know how much the other one did. It played at a lot of drive-ins. I don't know how many times it played in the theater by itself, but it was tagged along with a lot of films. And the folks who made this movie, unlike most people, unknowns who make a horror movie and scratch that off their bucket list and go on to do other things, went on to have shelves of Academy Awards. This film not only is considered by a lot of people to be the original Evil Dead, the premise is pretty similar, but the folks, and that's debatable. What's not debatable is the folks who worked on this became some of the most legendary special effects people in Hollywood. Jim Danforth, Dennis Muren, the late David Allen. These folks were amazing, and I think without this film, it's arguable that we wouldn't have had any of them. Mm-hmm. So for that alone, this movie deserves credit. But I think having now watched it again for this, and having accidentally watched the original, which I'd never seen before, the original 70-minute version, I think, yeah, as much as I love this film, I think I've underestimated it. I love this film even more now.
So what is the difference between the original film that you watched accidentally? I love that fact.
There's no Asmodeus. So that entire bit is missing, and that's a pretty major part of
wow.
Yeah. There's more stop motion animation. So I'm actually agog that they would cut even a frame of stop motion animation out, like especially the scene at the end with the flying devil. There's lots of really cool shots that for some reason they cut. I guess that does make the climax a bit leaner. And I am not to be trusted when it comes to stop motion animation because I'd watch a whole film of nothing but stop motion. But I think that was kind of incredible. And I think they lost a lot of characterization. I was actually fairly impressed watching the original. The first 15 minutes is the stuff that we see in the beginning of Equinox with the voiceover. Instead of, having him describe what it was like meeting people for the first time or whatever, we actually see them meet and have dialogue. And I frankly think it's pretty well written. I was actually surprised because I'd always heard the original was terrible, absolutely terrible. And they fixed it into being less terrible when they added all the new stuff. And I don't think that's true. I actually prefer the original. I appreciate what they did. I think what they did was probably smart from a marketing point of view. And Asmodeus is a fun character. But I think the original was really good.
Yeah. So this is the devil you were talking about.
Yes. That's directed. I believe that was animated by Dennis Muren. The rest of the animation was almost all by David Allen. And I think, frankly, the devil does not have the best animation, but I think some of the shots that they had were really clever. This is a movie, if you're a special effects guru, or even if you just love special effects, you can look at this frame by frame, and I can point out things that are amazing. The shot in the upper right that we're seeing there, the caveman.
Yes.
That to me is the most impressive part of the movie, and it's not stop motion. That is forced perspective, and that is some of the best forced perspective I have ever seen in my life. And when you find out it's just a guy standing on a picnic table that they've tricked up to look like the background so that the people who are way behind him are actually look like they're in front of him, you're amazed. And this scene, look at this shot. This is like 2 frames of film where the creature hits him and does something that should not be possible, which is have his hand in front of the guy.
Yeah.
And hit him, and that's animated. They stuck in
guys
like
in the foreground and the background. Yeah,
They stuck in just like a couple of frames of animated. They did things in this that are so sophisticated for a $6,000 film. I mean, You watch Superman 4 and look at how they spent however many millions of dollars, and it looks like crap. And these amateurs, just amateurs with a love of film, went out there and really racked their brains to see how they could pull off $1 million effects with not $1 million, not even $10,000. I'm amazed. And it does not surprise me looking at this and seeing the things they did, that these guys went on to become superstars.
This is going to be an interesting discussion. So what we're going to do here is we're going, if you're a first time listener, we give our first time we saw it, first time we've seen this film, whether it was back in 1970 or if it was yesterday or today even, and what our first impression was at that time. And then we'll discuss the film a little bit, and then we'll wrap things up at the end. So stick around for all that. Because Bill, he loves this film, and he's got a lot more to say. So we're gonna, since you just had a few moments, we're gonna circle back around to you.
Yeah.
Sir, all right. So Jeff,
I'll talk all day, so don't let me get away with that.
That's true. Jeff Mohr, you're up first. When did you first see this, and what is your first impression of Equinox?
So I think the first time I saw it was about 5 years ago, and I think I thought, this was a pretty good student film. And I'm going to tell a short little story because there is a sort of an anniversary we're not too far from. The first time I saw this, I sent in a question to Stump the Saint asking who was the famous fantasy writer that was in Exodus, and it didn't even come close to stumping him. Yeah, he had to think for a minute, but and that's when I was still just a listener. I was I shouldn't say just a listener. I was a listener, and I frequently sent in Stump the Saint questions, and I don't think I ever did. But anyway, it kind of reminded me of that. We've been seeing pictures of Wreak Havoc lately, which is sort of an anniversary of his passing for us anyway, because we were all together. So just a little shout out there. But this time around, I'm like Bill. I'm totally amazed, knowing more about the history of it and where it came from and who was making it and how they made it literally over years, and then going back like 5 years later and shooting some more scenes to put in. It's actually, I thought it was great fun to keep an eye out for. I mean, oh my God, the hairdos changed, Herb's not Herb, but what's his name on this? Jim. Frank Bonner's character's name is Jim. His sideburns go up and down and several times in the same scene, and the women come and they have different hairdos and the clothes aren't quite the same, or maybe don't fit quite the same. And it's just fun to watch. But I love the special effects this time around. And I like that thing. I was getting into on Facebook, Bill and Ralph Miller got into a discussion about this, and something that I wouldn't even have thought about was the blur of the wings of the devil.
Oh God, yeah.
Which I didn't even think about whether that was impressive or not. So that's something maybe you could talk about later. But in the original, the thing I really liked about the original is, well, in the full version, when after Jim / Herb Tarlick has been possessed by Amadeus, right? Or Amadeus is turned into him, whatever. He goes up, he turns around up on the top of this little outcropping, I think he turns into Amadeus for a minute, and then just raises his arms up in the air. And then the next scene is from another perspective, and it's the devil taking off. And in the original version, there's no Amadeus, and there's a scene where I can't help but call him Herb, where Jim turns around and his face is turning red, and I think there's maybe blood coming from his eyes, and he's got these fangs. And then they do it's not very good because I think it's a single dissolve shot, but he turns into the devil, which I thought was far more coherent in terms of the story of what was going on. I like that a lot better than what they did in the lengthy version. And I'll tell you what, the Amadeus guy, I swear that guy was like full on doing a Sterling Hayden impression. Did anybody else get that? I just kept thinking,
No,
is that
but now I
Sterling
see
Hayden's
it. Yeah.
brother? You know, I don't know if it was the eyebrows or the tone or whatever
Wow.
it was,
Oh,
but
Oh my God.
and then his
Handsome man.
that face, that curled up lip face was just grotesque. And in that anyway, so that whole side story with I forget what her name was, Susan, and him, and I don't know. I like parts of the second one, the longer one, the theatrical version, but something about the first one, which is less polished in some ways and more polished in others. Like Bill said, there's some character scenes, and they in the commentary they basically talk about, they make fun of the script, but they said we didn't know what we were doing. We just thought, oh well, we had some action there, so now we should put some, slow down and calmness in there. So then they have this big long exposition of telling them what's in the book and all that stuff, or introducing each other. So anyway, and considering the fact that they used what was I reading about? a 16 millimeter Bolex, which the only thing I know about it is what I read and heard about it on the movie, which is a wind up camera that would only run for about 30 seconds. So they couldn't,
That's right.
and it didn't have sound. So they shot the whole picture without sound, and all the scenes had to be less than 30 seconds.
That might have been the best thing in the world for them, because
Wow.
one flaw that a lot of these amateur movies have is they have scenes that go on.
So
for too long, and they
all the
couldn't do
sound
that.
is added. Yeah, all the sound is added afterwards, but they said that some of that stuff, it was like the torches. The torches didn't last very long, but they didn't have to because they could only go for 30 seconds.
This is real.
Anyway, I'll stop there. So it's great fun to see people that had this great love for the movies forge ahead and do something that they had no idea how to do, and come out with something, that's become a legend.
Yeah, it seems like every decade we get somebody like that, right? So, all right, Chad Hunt, when did you first see this? What was your first impression?
I saw this. I was at a convention and picked up a bootleg copy because everybody kept telling me how you got to see this, and normally I shied away from bootleg anything. But I picked up a copy, and I thought, wow, this is the cheesiest thing I've ever seen in my life. But I loved every second of the film, the special effects, and at the time I had no idea of the people who worked on it or their legacy through the years or any of that stuff. I remember the story, and I was so interested in that story about this book that would just unleash all these creatures, and I just thought that was just the coolest thing ever. The only bad thing about that is that copy that I had was a terrible copy, as most bootlegs are, and so. I haven't watched that since the mid 80s, I guess, was the first time I saw this. And I watched it a few times then, and I lost track of my copy or for whatever reason, but I have not seen it again since now. And the copy or the print that they're using on HBO Max, which is where I watched it, is just beautiful. It's a beautiful transfer, and I just saw this movie in a whole new light and fell in love with it again. The stop motion, I've always been a huge Harryhausen fan, and this just rocked my world to see it in such a clear, high definition situation. And again, that story, I just love that story. And I know it gets compared to Evil Dead, which it does have similarities, and that's debatable. I'm not, getting into that here or there, because I love Evil Dead. but to me, there's just something about that spirit of let's do this kind of movie, and that's what I got from it. Who cares if we don't have any money? Let's just do it.
Yeah,
kind of thing. Which I love. I love that, because that whole spirit of trying to do this, that you figure out ways to do it. Necessity is the mother of invention, type deal. So this is one. I don't care if it looks cheesy. I don't care if the acting is horrible. I don't care. I am just head over heels in love with this movie. I love it, and even more so now that even with Asmodeus and his wrinkly, crooked face, trying to kiss. Yeah. Oh my God. But I love it. I just love this film, and I'm so glad that we're able to talk about it, and I'm so glad I was able to see it in the way that we're seeing it now, and being able to talk about it. I love it. Love it.
All right, so I'm going to break format here because I'm going to go next because we're going to let Bill go last. Since he introduced everything, we're going to do full circle. Mm-hmm. So I saw this movie probably 20 years ago. Somewhere it played, and I watched it, and I dismissed it. This movie. I don't know what version I saw. It certainly wasn't this crisp copy. It was some, I don't know. But I was like, I can't stand this movie. This movie's terrible. I did not like it. So I was like, we're going to watch this movie. Okay. So first things first, this is a really great, it's a Criterion collection, right? So it is that version of it. And it doesn't look like old footage. Cause I probably, if I remember, it probably had like lines and shit through it, it'd been going through the ringer. It might even have a broken thing. Who knows? But not here, not this. This is pristine. It looks great. But see, the thing is I don't remember the Asmodeus character, so I have a feeling I saw the older version somehow. I don't know how, but because I did not remember. I remembered, the 4 people showing up at the thing, and I remember, the creatures in the book, but I don't remember that the guy on the horse. I don't remember at all. So I was like, what the hell is all this? That doesn't mean I didn't see it. It just means I don't remember it. But I still am not the biggest fan of this movie. I am the outlier here. Although some of the things like you're talking about absolutely did impress me. I think the giant was the most impressive because I was like, man, that they did a good job there. I mean, I know what they're doing because, I think we all learned about it when we saw, the forced perspective when we, Lord of the Rings, right? Kind of taught us all about how that worked. If we didn't already know, those who are a little bit more savvy than I was, maybe early 2000s. But so I really respect that, and the stop motion elements, but there's not a whole lot of that in there. But I don't know. So I'm torn about this film. I mean, I like it better now than I did my first impression. My first impression was not a very good impression. So first impressions can change, I guess, is what I'm going to leave this with. And I am excited to talk about this because finding out about all the people involved, and we'll likely get into all the people that have won Academy Awards since then, from all kinds of different films. That's going to be exciting to talk about. The biggest surprise for me watching it again was Frank Potter. I was like, that guy looks awful familiar. Who is that? And I was like, holy crap, it's Herb from WKRP. I was like, why is he in this film? but it was fantastic. All right, so I'm going to stop now and let Bill take over because I got to find out if Bill, did you did you see this in 1970 when it came out, or did you have to wait years?
No, I didn't have enough theaters around me to any hope of seeing this. Like I said, I saw the ads on TV, and the ads were great. Look up the YouTube trailer, Equinox, just that the guy's booming voice. I had no idea what an Equinox is. I thought maybe it was the name of the monster or something because they showed a lot of shots of the monsters, as you would if you wanted to sell the film. But I feel like it wasn't that long later that I saw it, and it was on late night TV. So if anyone knows when Equinox got onto TV, maybe I was older than I thought, but I heard about it a lot. By the time I finally saw it, I knew who Jim Danforth was. I'd heard about it on Famous Monsters and everything. So, and it was very cheap. It is very cheap. This may be the lowest budget movie we will ever do on this show. I can't imagine we've ever done a film with a smaller budget than this. This is, it's ridiculously small budget. And that shows, of course, although I'll give them credit. I mean, I think they do a lot of cool angles, and they do some stuff with the camera that they didn't just nail it down. They were really trying to go beyond. These are clearly people who love film. And I think that's really about this film what appeals to me now. This is actually the first time I was just thinking while you guys were talking, this is the first time I've seen it since I became a filmmaker. So now I'm seeing it with these new eyes of these are a bunch of people, just they love film. Love infuses this movie, and they went out and had to figure out how to make this work with very few resources. So they had to be clever. And to me, this is such a slap in the face to all those people who are given the opportunity to make a movie, and they make some dreadful sci-fi Sharknado versus Croctopus 4. And I've said this before, the people at the Sci-Fi Channel don't care if the movie's good or bad. They couldn't care less, which to me is the most ultimate freedom, to be able to make a movie the way you want it to be, and literally they don't care as long as you get it in with the correct number of minutes in it. Good dialogue, bad dialogue, they couldn't care less. And unfortunately, neither do most of the filmmakers. They say, oh, they don't care? Good, neither will I. A movie like this shows you, this is what you can do if you actually love what you're doing and you take your opportunity. These guys probably never thought they'd make a movie again. So they wanted to make this was their calling card. This is going to be the best they could do. So I don't know how old I was, but it was on TV. I feel like there were some scenes cut out. Like I was a little surprised watching it this time. I don't remember the scene where Asmodeus kind of forces himself on the woman. Which is really creepy. And let me just say something about Jack Woods. In a way, I kind of admire what this guy did.
Stop showing that.
Which he's given this 70-minute movie, and he's given orders, add another 20 minutes. And what does he do? The son of a bitch writes a role for himself where he gets to slobber all over the extremely attractive lead actress. Like, wow, the balls. I mean, if I were them and they gave say, here's
Miss Roseball.
Wait a minute.
Literally slobber.
Yeah, because I think she's gorgeous. She's such a girl next door look. She made virtually nothing else other than this, which I think is a lost opportunity, because she plays the sweet ingenue role. She's genuinely likable. You could see why the boys are crazy about her. And then at the end, she's damn scary. That she sells that with just a little bit of eye makeup and a slightly evil smile, not over the top, really subtle. I think she knocked it out of the park. I frankly think all the actors, with the possible, I don't want to pick on them, the possible exception of the lead, do a really good job. I think the lead's a little wooden. I frankly would have made Frank Bonner the lead character, but I know why they did, because he's short. And that's the whole reason. He clearly had more acting chops than anyone else in the movie. He should have been the lead, but he's short. And, I can identify with that. I'm 5'8", and I've been convinced my whole life that if I had been born 8'5", things would have been different.
Wouldn't we all?
Yeah.
8'5".
Jeff doesn't understand because he's like mistaken for Bigfoot.
He is 8 foot tall, though.
Yeah.
She was actually the Rose Bowl parade queen or something. The blonde. I forget her name now.
I'm not surprised.
Barbara Hewitt? Is that this one?
Yes.
Okay.
She's just got that natural, effortless looking attractiveness, just a sweetness to her. So, you care. But I think really, and again, especially in the original version, both actresses, I thought were very natural. I got the feeling watching this, again, now through the eyes of someone who's made really low budget films, that the folks had a good time making this, that they were enjoying themselves. And I think they had to be, because this movie was made the way I make feature movies with my friends on the weekends. and it takes a long time, and the seasons change. So if you're paying attention to my movies, you can see, hey, the trees suddenly don't have leaves anymore, and everyone's pretending that it's warm, but I can see their breath. I mean, that happens. We film over the course of a year, and these folks apparently did it over the course of 2 years. And when they came back and said, hey, we got to shoot a whole bunch of new scenes, they were game for it. I think they had a good time, and they wanted to see this through to the end. So I feel like I'm watching people making movies the way I enjoy making movies many years ago.
The filmmakers on one of the commentary actually make that comment, that the acting gets a lot of grief. But he said, we didn't know what we were doing. We were all about the special effects. We literally gave them no direction. and most of them weren't actors. So he goes, and like you just said, they showed up again, like 3-4 years later, and did their best and kept doing it. So
yeah.
Kind of hand it to them.
Let's talk about Jack Harris, right?
Yeah.
Is that right? Jack Harris?
Yeah.
This guy?
The producer.
Yeah. So The Blob is probably the first film that comes to most people's mind, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then Schlock, 40 Man.
40 Man.
Dinosaurus.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
There's a few others in there too. After this one, I mean, Schlock was
4D Man.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the 4D Man?
I have.
Fortunately.
Then he gets, I have.
It's got a great ending. Got a great twist ending there. And he was always big on endings that you could put a question mark on. He liked that. The end, or is it?
Yeah. And, Beware the Blob. He did that one too, which we've covered.
Yeah. Schlock is John Landis.
John Landis, your favorite.
Yeah.
Dark Star, Eyes of
Dark Star. Okay, so John Carpenter. I mean,
he
took a chance on young people.
The remake of The Blob from '88, he was producer on that too.
Yeah. So it's Jack H. Harris, not Jack C., right?
Oops.
Yeah. So there's the H in there. All right, I was just checking.
Oops, because there is a Jack C. Harris who I believe is a comic book writer. I must have missed that.
Well, there you go. Yeah. Beware the Blob. Dark Star. Well, that's impressive. The Eyes of Laura Mars. Oh my God, that's a movie we could do on this podcast.
Yes.
Faye Dunaway. Yeah.
Written by Carpenter.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I think Urban Kirshner directed it. The guy that did that.
Yes.
Star Wars.
Dinosaurus is a fun little movie too. It's got stop motion in it and a caveman, a little bit of it's fun little family fantasy. Another one that played on TV endlessly.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll say Jim Danforth is that the name that most people talk about with this, right?
Well, he did. I think most of the like matte paintings and optics stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where he's actually made a lot of his probably his bread and butter is doing matte paintings, but he's probably best known to special effects nuts as maybe the second greatest stop motion animator of all time. And there are some who probably would put him even ahead of Harryhausen in terms of his technique. When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth has some of the best stop motion ever. Super, super smooth, blurring techniques. I mean, an absolute master of it. I've always felt that there was something that Harryhausen. Go ahead.
Clash of the Titans.
Yes, he helped. Harryhausen. That was a chance.
Yeah, 1 million years to be 1 million years.
He did all the Pegasus in Clash of the Titans, which is some of the best and most complicated animation in the film. He's great. But there's something I'll always give Harryhausen the nod because although I think Danforth's quality, his technique is brilliant, there's something that Ray brought to his characters that just made them come alive in a way that nobody else ever did.
Yeah.
Even to the very end, the Medusa that he animated in Clash of the Titans is just an absolute masterpiece of putting personality into a rubber puppet. But here he was doing matte paintings, and he's done a mess of matte paintings. He's done matte paintings in everything from commercials to big pictures. I think he's still doing it. I believe he may have retired at this point. And he should have done a whole lot more. He was connected to the King Kong remake that we never got to see, and a lot of other projects that stalled, which is I think the one thing about Ray Harryhausen people tend to underestimate is that he was lucky enough to hook up with a producer who got him and understood him and supported him and raised the money and got the projects going. And Danforth,
gave him time.
Willis O'Brien and these others, it's just one missing project after another because although they had the imagination, they didn't have a money man who could make it happen.
He worked with Carpenter a lot too in his later years. They Live, Prince of Darkness, Memoirs of an Invisible Man. And he did a lot of matte paintings on that. Depending on what was needed, he did it. Matte paintings, optical stuff, animation, even second unit directing. So he was, it was really cool to see how closely he worked with Carpenter on some of those movies.
It's really an amazing coup that he was working on this film because he was nominated for an Oscar in 1965 for Seven Faces of Dr. Lao.
Oh, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I keep thinking this was that. So you're right.
Conversation about Caveman from 1981. He did a lot of the visual effects on.
He did the animation of the Beetle Man in Flesh Gordon. I mean, Jim Danforth, the guy who would work in high budget, low budget. I think he just loved doing the work. And again, I can't say it enough. I just feel when I watch this film, I'm seeing a lot of love put on the screen, and that comes through, and that gets it over its obvious cheapness and the sideburns. And if you do a drinking game on when people's hairstyles change, you will pass out.
When the hairstyles moved, especially the lead guy. His hair did not move one iota. Right, I don't know how much hair on it, but it was like a helmet.
He was identical.
Edward Connell, right? So
Well, and actually, that's another one. Is he was apparently on the original one, which they've changed. I think all of them. He was billed as Skip somebody or another.
Skip.
He looks like a Skip.
He does.
He does. He does.
This is his only credit.
Yeah.
He sounded like the guy that did the old 1950s school videos on "Don't be a lunkhead like Bill." Don't be a bonker head like Johnny, or that kind of.
The other thing, one of your actors I love in this is the crazy old man in the cave, who is so terrible, so crazy that you say to yourself, "This must be an investor." And sure enough, it was. It was. I think the director's grandfather.
Yes.
Who gave him choice. You can use this money I've been saving for your college fund, or you can go make Equinox. And he chose well. Let that be a lesson to you, boys and girls.
One of the evils of independent filmmaking.
Yeah, Lewis Clayton. I don't know. That guy laughed funny, man. He was the kind of crazy old man you'd want to find in a cave if you're going to make a movie about a crazy old man in a cave.
Well, that wasn't his voice. That was put out later.
Oh, wasn't it? Okay. All right. Oh, that's right, because it was all shot silent, right? So.
Yeah, he actually said he couldn't remember his lines, and so he just ended up. If you read his lips, he was just saying "Mary had a little lamb" all the time.
That's awesome. I love this movie even more right now.
Oh my god! Now I gotta go watch it again. You guys are making me watch this movie.
Probably burn through a whole reel of expensive 16mm film trying to get him to say his lines. Like, Gramps, just say anything, and we'll put it in.
Peas and carrots.
Watermelon cantaloupe. Watermelon cantaloupe.
Oh my gosh.
Awesome.
All right. So who else got nominated or won Academy Awards in this? You were rattling them off in the pre-show.
Well, Dennis Muren, I think, has all the Academy Awards. Doesn't he hold like a record or something? Or
he's got 6 Oscars. Yeah,
6 Oscars.
It's a 6. I don't know how many he was nominated for. 1, 2, 3, 4 nominations. And 5 nominations. 6 nominations. 7. So 6 wins plus 7 more nominations.
Okay.
So, wow.
13.
That's.
And I believe shortly after this, didn't he work on, or am I getting it mixed up with Klein? Didn't he work on Gumby and David and Goliath?
I feel like maybe that was David Allen, but I'm not sure.
Okay. I think you're right. I think I got them mixed up.
And David Allen. Now, David Allen is the tragic story in all this. Not that he didn't go on to do other great stuff. He did, but he left us way too soon, and he was working on his what would be his masterpiece, The Primevals. And
Oh,
it was
yeah.
gonna be a stop motion epic. I mean, big thing. People in the Andes discover the abominable snowman who's controlled by lizard aliens, and it just sounded absolutely amazing. And this was his dream project, and he would just do a little bit, raise some money, do a little bit more. And he passed away with the film largely unfinished. I keep hearing that they are going to finish it. A lot of special effects people who love this guy have put in time and effort and money to finish it. I kind of suspect by the time we finally see it, it's going to look ridiculously old-fashioned. But at least we'll have some cool stop motion, and it just seems fair. He was a terrific animator, and apparently a really hell of a nice guy. But yeah, it's always sad when you lose people early and they didn't get the chance to see their dream project come true.
Now,
just stopping back at Dennis Muren for a second. I mean,
Sure.
this is too amazing to not list. So his Oscar-winning films are Jurassic Park, Terminator 2, The Abyss, Inner Space, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, Return of the Jedi, E.T.
Damn.
the Extraterrestrial, and then there was another one that was Technical Achievement Award for developing something for Industrial Light and Magic, and got another one like that for Empire Strikes Back.
That's a hell of a resume.
I was going to say, I wish he worked on some notable films.
Yeah.
It'd be really good if we knew what he would have actually.
I mean, I believe
it
he's
also-
given the credit for. He's the one who convinced Steven Spielberg not to do stop motion on Jurassic Park. That computer animation,
Really?
combined with Stan Winston's live action animatronics, could actually sell the movie. So those of us who love stop motion, we could hold a grudge, but let's face it, it was going to happen inevitably. And Jurassic Park still has some of the best CGI ever, which is strange in that it's the first one
holds
to
up.
do it.
It
Yeah,
holds
And
up so well, yeah.
and he started off with Equinox, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and Flesh Gordon was the last film he did before
Flash Gordon had
Star
some good
Wars.
people working on it. Yeah.
There you go. That's crazy, that movie. All right. Ed Begley Jr. is in the credits here. He's that's a name some people might recognize.
Sure.
He was an assistant cameraman. Now, is he assistant cameraman on the original or when they
think
did
the
the extra 20 minutes? Really? Okay.
I think so.
That's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
It is. It's very strange. And the other one that we mentioned was Conrad Buff, who was listed as production staff. He ends up becoming an editor and wins an Oscar for film editing on Titanic.
Wow.
And was nominated for Terminator 2. So
Never heard of that movie. Never heard of it.
yeah, it's insane. It's insane.
So this film has there's a lot of
Hello? We're getting a phone call. From
I am. Someone's can't be anything important.
It's Asmodeus.
Asmodeus. There's oh my god. I just think he looked in the mirror and said, I can do this. And he's got that horsey face, that awful lyric. I could not get that out of my head when I finally did see this movie.
Yes.
I mean, this movie's about as scary as cottage cheese, but going to sleep that night, that face does linger in the memory. Although apparently not in Doc's memory.
Well, I don't think he was in it. I think I saw the one without him because I would remember that. That's
You would
insane.
think.
Oh, or maybe I fell asleep in this. I don't know. Who knows? But all right. Well, I think we've talked a lot about this film. We actually talked more than I was expecting, but I should have known better because of Bill's absolute love and admiration for this film. So Herb wants to say something. What are you doing, Herb?
So
What are you doing?
I got to mention Fritz Leiber again. This guy is such an iconic, groundbreaking author. I mean, he's literally the guy that coined the term sword and sorcery.
Did he?
With his Pfaffert and Gray Mouser series. I mean, there was, Robert Howard came before, but Leiber's the one who first said that term and made it popular.
Oh, wow.
And he's won an unbelievable number of awards. I'm sorry, Chad?
I love the Pfaffert and Gray Mouser series. It was adapted, I think, by Dark Horse with Mike Mignola art on
cool.
it back in the day. And that was my first introduction to him, to Fritz Leiber, and hooked ever since. Him and Robert.
I can't remember who did it, but I got a like a 5 or 6 book series that came out in the 80s from a specialty press, just where all of them collected together. But and then the fact that he was in this, he got Forey Ackerman got him for this, and the guys on the commentary made the comment they just couldn't believe he was like 55 or 60 years old when they were doing this, probably 55, and running through the forest and down that creek, and he said that water was friggin' cold, and he had to fall down and lay down in that creek.
He did a good job. He was still.
Yeah, the one guy says he remembers him very clearly saying, "I wish Forey was the one here laying in this water."
Oh yeah, because he plays Dr. Waterman, the guy there.
Yes, yeah. So it's actually inspired. I think. I mean, it's and his father was a classically trained actor. So
yeah, he made like.
Anyway, he's one of my favorites. You got to mention him.
He did a great job.
Yeah, he did a fine job. I mean, this.
Oh, and the other thing, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
So we haven't talked about this, and I want to get what you think, Bill. And first, I'll say what I heard him say. But that weird sort of dimensional thing that they go into, and they disappear.
Yeah.
And what they said was they just set up like a system of like 2 mirrors that it came, hit the one mirror, reflected back to that one, and then showed the area behind them was showing off that mirror. And I don't know why that would show what they had to do to get the fuzzy line. But that I thought that was impressive as hell because the camera's moving and everything. It's like,
that's a very easy thing to do. I mean, you look at the effects in this, and people might be thinking, "What's so damn impressive? We can do all this now in After Effects." Yeah, no duh. But they didn't have After Effects in 1967.
No, they did not.
Film. This the most you could do back then. And God, as God's my witness, I used to do this. You would film with your Super 8 camera, put it into a closet, take the film out, and manually rewind the film and slap it back in there and do a double exposure. Did you rewind it enough? Guess you're going to find out when you spend a fortune to get it developed and it comes back.
Oh my God.
We were working blind back then. So I'm not 100% sure exactly what they mean by using mirrors, but this film, and this blows my mind, this film uses a technique called front projection, which is different from back projection, where you would stand in front of a big screen and they would project stuff through the screen. You've seen that a million times. It usually makes a big blue ring around you. It looks phony as crap. Never looks good. Almost never, unless you have some real good people. It looks better in black and white. They use front projection, which is a nuts idea that you have a screen made out of Scotch-Lite, which has millions of little glass dots on it. You stand in front of the screen and they project a scene at you. That's so it goes through a 2-way mirror. And when it hits you, it's so faint that it doesn't show up on film. But when it hits the Scotch-Lite like reflects it back and magnifies it, and you effectively create your own matte. Your shadow creates a matte. Crazy. And it was popularized a few years later in Stanley Kubrick's 2001.
Wow.
Equinox beat them to it. And that's where you see, and it's the trailer. And I'll tell you, as a kid, because I was really getting into stop motion, I actually filmed when it came on TV one time, and I filmed the TV with my Super 8 camera because I had to see how they did this scene, and I still couldn't figure it out. Where the beast, the animated gorilla thing, is in the background. One of the women is in the foreground. Now that's a standard Harryhausen thing where you split. You film the girl, you split it, you create a mat, you put the creature in front of it, and then the other woman runs in front of it, and I just about fell out of my chair because I'm like, okay, if you ever watch a Harryhausen movie, that doesn't happen. Right. The real people don't appear in front of the creature because that would ruin the mat. These guys were using techniques that were way ahead of their time.
Well, this is an example of another thing I didn't notice, but in the commentary, there's a scene where that creature, and I wish I could remember what it was called. Anybody? I thought that was
Did it have a name?
great stop motion.
I don't think that's
Well, they didn't
creature?
have a name for it. I think it did
Yeah.
in the thing. But anyway,
Talking about this guy.
they're standing
Yeah,
around
you
and
know,
looking
yeah.
at it. They're standing around looking at it, and one of the guys in the commentary goes, "Oh, Frank Bonner's shadow there. That's my finger."
Yeah.
So like they put a shadow in there.
Wow.
I don't know how did they do that? Somehow or another, he put a shadow in that shot of the his stop motion set,
That's amazing.
and it was that laid across the creature. I don't know.
They were
Those
very
just-
smart.
Those creatures were
I
amazing.
don't think he was joking
Yeah.
of it. So it wasn't perfect. It was the shadow moved a little bit when he was sitting still, but it's like, wow.
They were very smart in that they didn't always do the same trick twice. If you're a magician and your only trick is making a card disappear, the worst mistake you can make is using the same technique to make it disappear each time, because eventually the audience will figure it out. So you keep, every time they think that they've figured out what to do and they're looking for it, you use a different way to do it. And that's very smart. Even if it's something as basic as stop motion animation, use front projection, rear projection, models, real people, switch it around, and then it doesn't become all that obvious. Oh man, I just love this stuff. That wonderful forced perspective where they're looking at the creature's corpse. I mean, that's it. They just put the model on a table. I will say they did a fantastic job of matching the ground, because I've seen a lot of forced perspective that doesn't work for that very reason, where there's just too clear a color difference between the foreground and the background, and it's pretty obvious where the models were. So they put a lot of work into this. They really did. Jeff was talking about the blur thing. Ralph and I were talking when the demon takes off, when he first jumps, there's a blur. Stop motion doesn't have blur. That's one of its charms and one of its, I guess, deficiencies. When things are moving fast, every frame is sharp focused, so you get a strobing effect, especially with a flying creature which is flapping its wings very fast. They put a blur in there somehow, and there's different ways of doing that. All of them are ridiculously complicated. Like right when you click the camera, you jostle the creature a little bit so it shakes, and you get just a little bit of the blur on the camera. With this one, we think they probably had a pane of glass in front and smeared some Vaseline on it so that the creature, the picture of it was blurred. That's a real subtle thing. I mean, I doubt that one person out of 100 even cares, but I care. You know, they cared, and that's what I see in this film.
And it doesn't seem like that's something they would get right the first time right off the bat either. I don't know. Maybe
yeah,
not.
and
Maybe
again, this
good.
is back in the day where, you know, you didn't get to do what we do now, which is we shoot something and then everybody crowds around the camera. We look at it like, ooh, that sucked. Let's do it again. You did it. You sent it out. They developed it. It came back. I mean, we're talking a month later, and then you say, ooh, that sucked. Let's start all over a month later.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I suspect kind of like back when we had to use typewriters. You got it right the first time more often than we do now. It's like tap it, tap it, tap. Oh, 14 spelling errors, no problem. Fix. Man, if you did that with a typewriter, you'd still be writing right now. I still would never have gotten that high school essay in. You were very careful about, you thought about it before you did it. I don't want to be old man yelling at clouds. I don't want to go back to the good old days of shooting on Super 8, Super 8 blue. But there was a fun to it.
Insert delete is far better than whiteout.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Well, we got to wrap this up. We're going really long, so we're going to go through it really quick. We're going to have to just give kind of a favorite scene and an impression. What this film means to you. That's what I want to know. So, Bill, we're holding you for last. Jeff,
Okay.
You are up first. Please let us know.
Well, I can understand why people wouldn't like this, because it's not polished. It's not a super coherent story. But I love the idea of the book. I loved, we didn't mention it, but the amount of detail they put into that book, although the doc tells me to be fast, and I'm like going, I was screaming at the screen when they were handling this millennium old book while they were eating fried chicken. I'm like, what
That's right.
the hell? Anyway, that isn't in the original.
Colonel gets a shout out in the film. That's funny.
So yeah, I just think this whole idea of the state that those guys were in, where they were in their careers, and what they were able to produce on somewhere in the neighborhood of like $5,000 or $6,000 is pretty incredible. And that Jack Harris then decides to pick it up just because he loves stop motion animation, and thought, oh, this will be the next King Kong, you know.
Yeah.
So you'd have to see this, and you need to go into it with that eye for people that have no business doing what they're doing because they don't have any experience. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know what it's going to look like, and they forge ahead and do it. And there's some amazing stuff in here.
Do you have a favorite scene?
I'll take the geez. I'll say, well, you know what? I'm going to say the opening stop motion, which isn't the greatest, but with the tentacled thing behind the house, I thought that was great. That right away got me thinking, ooh, Lovecraft type stuff.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah. All right, Chad Hunt, you're up next. What does this film mean to you? Favorite scene?
Coming from a comic book background, I'm whenever I watch movies, it's always about the story. How good is the story? And I really, really fell in love with the idea of this book, and I thought it was such a great idea that this book could bring about. And then that's why I'm such an Evil Dead fan, I guess, is the similarities between these two movies. But the idea that a book could bring forth all these evil monsters and creatures and stuff like that just sticks with me, and it's executed in a way that it has that spirit, that can-do spirit of, we only have this much money, but we got to figure out a way to make this work, and they made it work. And it means, that's what it means to me, is the story first caught my attention and really hooked me. And then all the technical things that they were able to accomplish for that story, to accomplish telling that story, it's right up there with Evil Dead and movies like that had little to no budget, but yet made a very effective film. And that's where I am with that. And my favorite scene, it was also, I have to go with Jeff on that. It was the tentacled, because the first thing I thought too was Lovecraft. This is Lovecraft, being creatures from another dimension being brought in and just wreaking havoc on humanity. And I just thought, as the first time I watched it, I just thought that tentacle thing was so creepy as it destroyed the house. And that's my favorite scene too. I have to just copy Jeff on that.
Perfect. We mentioned earlier that these people had no business making a movie, but except for their passion to make one, right? That's the only thing gave them the right. And I mentioned that every decade seems to have one. If you consider this as late '60s, in the '50s it would be Ed Wood, right? Yeah, but you love watching Ed Wood movies, right? Even though maybe he shouldn't have made these people, but they, there's a passion here that belongs. And then in the '70s, you might say Rudy Ray Moore, right?
Yeah.
With Dolomite and all that stuff. I don't know what you would do in the '80s, but there's got to be something. It may even be just Evil Dead, plain and simple. But maybe, I don't know. There's probably something I'm forgetting, but that's this movie's charm, is that the love that they have for making this film is on the screen, right? There is a passion to it there, and they achieve things that you wouldn't expect them to, be able to achieve. Most of it in the special effects department, and of course, the film has an interesting history as far as just wanting to experience cinema history, this film is a must-see, right? It's in the Criterion Collection for a reason. And it is a film that, if you're interested in that sort of aspect of it, you're going to want to check it out for that alone. If you're into stop motion animation, I would imagine you're going to want to see it just for the creatures. And the creatures are a lot of fun. Not all of them are stop motion, right? Because the
Caveman was not.
Caveman is not. It's just forced perspective, and very impressive though. That's
Yes,
very
very
impressive.
impressive.
But you've got the tentacled creature, you've got the devil, and you've got the Well, I always thought that creature was called the Equinox. That somebody else said that, right? And I was always like,
Yeah,
that creature on the cover of the thing has to be Equinox, right? That's
I've
Equinox.
heard him called Taurus or Tauros
Yeah.
or something, but I don't know if that's in the movie or just something people made up.
I don't know.
That's what I was going for.
Yeah, but he has a great design, with the the fuzzy arms, and it really is remarkable when you take everything into account for this film. My favorite scene is going to be the forced perspective with the giant. I really stopped
Mhm.
when I was watching this film over the weekend, and I went, "Wow, that's a good effect. They really did. That's impressive. That guy actually looks like he's 12, 13 feet tall over top of these people. How wonderful." And then, I'm also thinking this was 1970 or earlier, and they did this. This is amazing. So I'm going to leave it there. So we were already at an hour. Holy cow. Bill,
Try to talk
give it
fast.
to us.
Oh
take 30
boy, I'm obviously I love this film. I love it a lot. It's actually kind of almost hard to talk to, and it's interesting talking to you guys has reminded me things. It just occurred to me during this broadcast, the first screenplay I ever wrote was so inspired by this. It's not funny. It was about a bunch of kids who go in the woods and find a portal to a land full of dinosaurs. Yeah, I was really going to be able to shoot that back when I was a kid. That's what influence this movie had on me. And to me, this is kind of like why I'm in filmmaking. I hope that maybe the films I shoot, which are not masterpieces, but they're fun, and we had fun making them, and they're overly ambitious. And that's cool because maybe it'll inspire someone else to see this and say, these people had no money, but they had crazy ideas and they tried to make them work, and maybe it worked, maybe it didn't, but I can do that too. And there's no reason you shouldn't. If you love movies, you shouldn't let the fact that you don't have a lot of resources slow you down. If it does slow you down, maybe you don't have enough love for them. So do it anyway. And it's much easier to do it now than it was when these folks were doing it. And they went on to great things. It's this to me is just, it's a love letter to movie making from a bunch of people, and we get to enjoy it. And as a result, we got to enjoy even more things from them in the future because they went on to do great stuff. I realize this movie is so unpolished, very unpolished. But sometimes you pick up a rock, a crystal or something. It doesn't need to be set through a rock tumbler to have all the edges smoothed off. I mean, there's a beauty in the roughness. This is as good a film as could have been done for that budget. In fact, it's way better than should have been done for that budget, and needs to be appreciated under that. If you can do that, I think this is just a wonderful film. Love it.
Perfect.
And my favorite scene
Perfect.
has no stop motion. It's the ending. The ending is such a downer, so well done, so typical of that era where happy endings, we laugh at happy endings, and yet brilliantly set up. It was perfect. I mean, the whole movie was trying to separate this guy from his crucifix 1 year and 1 day later, and that was definitely the one scary bit to kind of take back. Now it's turn off the movie. It's 3 a.m, go to sleep, and try not to think about Mr. Crooked Mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There it is again. Jesus.
All right. So check this movie out. It's on HBO Max right now in the Criterion section of that, and it looks wonderful for the presentation. Not there's a rawness to it. That rough rock, as Bill was saying, but the print is really wonderful.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. All right. Well, this was really a remarkable discussion. And if you're listening still, thank you for hanging out with us. Holy cow, you waited an hour listening to this. I'm hoping you learned a lot about and are fascinated about this particular film, Equinox. It just barely squeaked into the 1970s, right? Considering its history. If you are enjoying it, please subscribe down below, hit the like button, hit the bell so you can be reminded. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think of Equinox. this particular film, or is there another film like it that you would like for us to cover in the future? Let us know. Oh my gosh, Chad, Bill, Jeff, thank you for joining me tonight. This was so much fun.
Thanks for picking this.
Thanks
for
you,
picking
Doc.
this trip.
Thanks, everybody.
And with that, let's say goodnight.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.